What is going on, guys? Welcome back to another Swift video. In today's video, we're going to be learning how to implement an interstitial ad, otherwise known as a full screen pop-up ad. So if we open up the app here, you'll see that we have a button, and when we tap it, we get this full screen pop-up ad. We're using Google Ads, so we're going to take a look at how to set this up in the console, bring in the code, how to dismiss it, and we're loading a new ad behind the scenes so we can re-present it and all that good stuff. So make sure you destroy the like button as always. Hit subscribe while you're at it if you have been around and enjoyed these videos. And the other thing I'll mention before we jump into it is I haven't been posting for the past few days because I've been traveling, as some of you know that follow me on social media, but I wanted to quickly share some pictures for those of you that care. I've been on the West Coast, nice little time to unplug from, work and life. So here's some cool little pictures of what I've been up to for the past few days. So that said, let's get into some code as always. Quick pause before we get into the video. If you haven't seen it already, I am hard at work putting together iOSacademy.io, a community where all of us iOS engineers can come together, learn how to build some of the top apps like Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram, in addition to interview prep to land some of these iOS roles at top tech companies. So if you're interested in the free and premium content to come, head on over to iOSacademy.io and enter your email address in the waitlist form, and you will be notified as content becomes available. That said, let's get into the video. All right, so we're going to get started by opening up Xcode and creating a new project. And we're going to stick with a single view application. I'm going to go ahead and call this project Google Interstitial, hopefully I spelled that right, Google Interstitial Ad. Go ahead and create it and save it wherever you'd like. And we're going to jump right in. So the very first thing we want to do is bring in the actual SDK that Google provides for showing ads. And we're going to bring that in via CocoaPods. So go ahead and open up Terminal. And we're going to CD into the project. So I put it on my desktop, this folder. And what did I call it again? I called it Google Interstitial Ads. So let's search for that. We're going to do a pod init to initialize CocoaPods in this project. After that, we're going to open up the pod file by doing a open pod file. And the CocoaPod that we want to bring in is called Google Mobile Ads SDK, I believe. Make sure you lowercase that p, otherwise you're going to run into issues. Go ahead and close text edit with a Command Q, and you can run pod install. We can actually do a Command W on this Xcode window to close it as we're going to open up the workspace after all of this stuff installs. So you'll see that a couple of things are being installed because Google's own library has upstream dependencies. So you see Google Utilities here, Promise, Objective-C, et cetera, et cetera. So once it all installs and it's good to go, you can now open up the project name .xc workspace, which should have been generated for you. And that should open up. Let me close this right panel. Let's expand our window over here. Let's open up the project. Let's pick a simulator, of course. Hit the run button to make sure things are compiling, and we'll trudge forward with some code. So give it a few seconds to compile. And actually, while it's doing this, you want to, actually there it goes. While this is launching, you want to head over to admob.com. It's Google's advertising platform for mobile apps. As you can see here, create an account if you don't have one already. You have to use your Gmail account, your Google account. So once it's set up and you have this account, you can log in, and we're on the screen to create a new app. So the very first thing it asks you is if you published your app already onto the store. We haven't, of course, so we're going to hit no. The next thing it asks you is the platform. So we're obviously on iOS. And we're basically registering our app right now with the Google Ad platform. So I'm going to go ahead and call this Google Interstitial Ad Demo. iOS is good. Enable user metrics. You can leave that checked. You can go ahead and hit add, and it creates your app, and it gives you this information here. The thing you want is your app ID, so you can copy it or hit this button to copy it to your clipboard. And you can see here that once we launched the app, it actually crashed. And if you look at the console output here, you'll see that we are missing the Google identifier in the plist. So there's an initialization exception. And basically what this is complaining about is we need to put that ID we just copied from the browser into our plist. So go ahead and click on your info.plist, come to the last row, select it and hit enter. And you want to add GAD application identifier, hit tab and paste in that application ID you just copied from the website. You can also now go to the app delegate, and in here you want to go ahead and import the framework, so Google Mobile Ads. And in the function application did finish launching, you want to initialize the ads SDK by saying GAD mobile ads shared instance, and you want to call start with a completion handler, which is optional. So we'll just go ahead and pass in nil. Now go ahead and hit Command R once more, and now your app should actually launch, no crashing, and you should just sit on the main view controller. So mine's black here because this device, I believe, is in dark mode. Let's double check. There it is. Yep, it's in dark mode. So the app is now successfully launching, and we're sitting here. You can see there's no crash, but there is a bunch of stuff being thrown into the console. We can ignore all of that. And we can move on to actually implementing the ad. So we're going to implement the ad in the view controller. We're going to have a button, and when the user taps on it, we're going to show an interstitial ad, otherwise known as a full screen ad. And let's go ahead and set that up. So the first thing we want to do is in the console here, we want to actually create an instance of an ad unit. So we'll just hit that convenient button. Here are the 4 types of ads they support. We're going to select interstitial. It's going to want us to give the ad a name. So I'm just going to call it home interstitial. Go ahead and create it. Notice now there is an ad identifier here. So you want to copy this guy, as this is what we're going to use to actually load the ad. So go ahead and copy that. I'm going to go ahead and create a struct on here for constants. And we're going to say home ad ID. And we're going to put that in there as a string. And I think we're good to go now in terms of the actual console here. So you can go ahead and close this or leave it open. I'm just going to leave it open in case we mess up this copy paste. And let's implement these ads. So go ahead and import Google Mobile Ads. Like I mentioned, we're going to want a button to actually show the ad. So I'm simply going to create it in view to load. It's going to be a very standard UI button with a frame. X will leave a 0, 0, 200. We'll say 55. We're going to add this as a subview. We're going to set a background color so it's not totally ugly. We're going to center it. Let's see, what else do we want? We want some text on it. That's slightly important. So we're going to say set title. We're going to call it show ad, normal. Let's also set a title color so we can see it on the blue, and that'll be white. And I think that's good enough. We should also add a target to this button, which is what gets called when the button is tapped. So we're going to add a target with a selector, and this is going to be did tap button, which will create in 2 seconds. And the event is touch up inside. Go ahead and create that function. It'll be a private function called did tap button. Make sure it's exposed to Objective-C as that's required for it to be a selector. And let's see, go ahead and hit Command R. You should see your button showing up now in the middle of the screen, hopefully. Maybe, there it goes. Okay, perfect. We have our button, tapping it, nothing happens. Let's have an ad show up. So to create an ad, it's actually pretty simple. The first thing we want to do is create a local property, and I'm going to call it interstitial ad. I feel like I always spell this wrong. and it's going to be GAD interstitial add optional. And we're going to create a function down here, and it's going to be called create add, and it's going to return a GAD interstitial add. And basically in here, we're going to say let add is a GAD interstitial add, and you're going to instantiate it like that. You're going to say add, whoops, nope, I spelled this one wrong too. This is not what we want. We want a GAD interstitial add, oh, just interstitial, no add, just kidding. So we're going to create that here with the constructor, and the constructor takes an add unit ID, which is what we put in our constants. So we can pass in that constants.home add ID. We're also going to say the delegate of this is self. We're going to say add, we want to load a request. So that's going to be a Google Ad request like that. And finally, you can go ahead and return the add to the caller. So this line is giving us an error because we've said the delegate is self, but we have not conformed. So let's go ahead and add an extension to the view controller and conform to GAD interstitial add delegate. And I don't believe any of the functions are required in here, but if we command click into this, you'll see there's a couple life cycle functions for the interstitial add. And the one that we want is did dismiss. So you see there's things like did receive ad, and there's quite a few actually for various functionality, but we're going to implement did dismiss. So interstitial did dismiss. And we'll implement this in 2 seconds. And what we're going to say in view did load is self.interstitial add is create add. And let's see, why is this complaining? Because I probably spelled this one wrong too. This is supposed to be GAD interstitial. So they match up. This error should go away now. And when the button is tapped, it's pretty simple. What we want to check is if interstitial add is ready, AKA the ad is available. And because this is optional, we should do equals true. Then we can simply say interstitial add, I believe present is what we want. Present from view controller, and that view controller is self. And that's basically it in terms of presenting an ad. So let's go ahead and hit Command R. And there's one thing we didn't implement down here, which is a delegate, and we'll talk about this in 2 seconds. So we have a button here. We tap on this, and we see our ad pops up. Looks like I tapped twice there, and it was a little delayed, so we got 2 ads. Oh, just kidding, we had 1. So we tap on it again after the first time, and now it looks like there's a problem. Now it looks like it's not showing the ad, so what gives? So basically the way this works is each interstitial can only be shown once. In other words, when you create an interstitial ad and call this load function on it, it's only good to be shown once. So obviously in our apps, we might want to show an ad multiple times, and the way that we handle that is in this function of did dismiss screen for the ad, you simply want to reassign the ad. So you can say once it has dismissed, the interstitial add property, just assign it to create ad again. And note that the ad unit ID is the same every time, but we call this load again each time. So one way you can do it is just call load again. I find it cleaner and easier and more legible to do it this way. But now if we go ahead, and let me also add a print statement in here. Let's actually add the print statement in the create ad. So I'm going to add a print statement in here and call it creating interstitial add. Go ahead and hit Command R. And I'm going to clear out the console because it's going to put a bunch of nonsense in here with the Command K. Keep it nice and clean. So if we hit this, you'll see that the ad showed up, and actually I cleared it already, but it already loaded the ad once. But when we dismiss this, you'll see in here a few things. The first thing you see is some keyboard stuff, which is irrelevant, but the thing that we care about is loading ad, which is right here, creating interstitial ad. So it went ahead and called that function again, so we should have another ad to show, which we in fact do. Not sure why it looks like it's popping up twice. That seems like a Google little bug. You'll also notice when you're developing, it says test ad or test mode. This used to not be available, so you have to be very careful when you were testing. Now you can go ahead and click on the ads, and you won't be penalized by Google for kind of fake clicks. The other functions in here are pretty interesting too. So sometimes so the reason we have to basically check if it's ready is if the ad has loaded and if we have any other criteria. So some folks also like to implement did receive ad. So interstitial did receive ad. This gets called when the ad has loaded per the request. So I usually don't implement this, just want to call it out that it's available. And the last thing I'll mention before we actually wrap up is right now, when you call this function, the ad is shown every time. Sometimes in your apps, what you want to do is maybe not show the ad every time some event occurs. It's pretty common to show an ad between view controller switches. So what people will do is, let's say we want to throttle this to only show it 50% of the time. We can say X is a random integer between 0 and 10. And we can say if X is even, aka if X %2 equals 0, then we can show the ad. Otherwise, we can just not show it. And this will basically just only show the ad 50% of the time due to the random number that we are getting. So that time I clicked it, nothing happened. That time it showed up, et cetera, et cetera. So there you have it. That's how you show a interstitial ad in your iOS app. It's a great source of revenue, higher revenue than a banner ad, very little code to implement it. Just to recap, just go to your Admob console, register an app, register the ad, bring in the SDK, and hook a few things up, and you're in business. So that said, thank you so much for watching. If you haven't destroyed that like button already, make sure to do so for the YouTube algorithm as always. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to leave them down below in the comment section. Thanks for watching, and I will catch you in the next one.